A barbershop is a better quarter. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Today I'm going to be showing to you Lattafa's Abiyedh leather. So there is about 5 or 6 different fragrances in the Lattafa and the Abiyedh line. There's one called Coral, which is a dupe of Room 1015's Wave Child. There's a white one which smells like Jerejov's Herba Pura. And we have this one here, which is a dupe of Memo's Irish Leather. And I must say, it is a pretty darn good one, especially for the cheap price. Now, before I get into this fragrance, I will say just quickly how much this fragrance cost me. I got this off of eBay. We can also get this off of TikTok shop for a similar price. I got this for around 12 Great British pounds, which is about $15 to $20 on the internet, or at least in the USA. With the bottle presentation, here's what it looks like. So the bottle itself is really sort of thick. The glass, if you look in between, the glass is super thick. If you would drop this on someone's head, you could probably crack it open. The cap is really light, I must say. Very sort of a light cap, barely any heft to it. It's just there for show to protect the atomizer, obviously. On the back, you've got the Lattafa sort of logo in a way. On the front, you do as well with the emblem. You've got some sort of interesting pattern on the front. And you have the bottle with the juice, obviously, overall. Now let's go ahead and spray this one just so you can see how good the atomizer is. You get these massive puffs of quite high oil concentration, I must say. This lasts quite a long time, but I'll get into that later. So first off, right off the bat, I get a lot of juniper berries. I get a lot of green aspects. This is very fresh and green, and in the base you get a touch, just a touch of leather. Now, the main fragrance notes of this are... Hold on, let me get my phone. Be right back. Okay, so the top notes of this fragrance consist of juniper berries, cardamom, pink pepper and raspberry. The middle notes consist of iris, ginger and rose. And the base notes consist of leather, white musk and amber. As I previously said, I get a massive blast of the juniper berries. It's almost photorealistic. It's very, very fresh, very, very green, and very uplifting in a way as well. Quite a bit of sweetness from the raspberry as well, but it's not overall sweet. Overall, the fragrance is very balsamic, but I do get a touch of a sort of tangy, bitter raspberry in a way. Now, in the original fragrance, which is Memo's Irish Leather, the notes are somewhat similar, but one note that I get in this a lot, which isn't noted but I get in the original, is the yerba mate note. It smells a lot like yerba if you ever drunk it. It's a very sort of green, fresh, lawn sort of smell in a way. Imagine freshly cut grass. Yeah, that's what I get from the middle, with a very sort of fresh, almost like, imagine you've freshly mowed the lawn and it's just started to rain. It's not entirely fresh and dry. It's still very fresh, but at the same time there's a bit of mellowness that keeps it from being super, super bright and citrusy. But yeah, I get a lot of yerba mate, I get a lot of juniper berries, obviously, hit straight in the opening. And if you focus really hard, you can smell the leather, but most of the time, it isn't really there. This isn't really a leather fragrance, it's more of a green, fresh fougere. And for those who don't know what fougere is a mainly fresh green herbal sort of fragrance. It's supposed to remind you of herbs or anything that's sort of green. Fougeres, think Creed, Silver Mountain Water, think anything like that, in that sort of ballpark. What's interesting as well is it smells really similar to another niche fragrance. Maison Crivelli has released an iris-based fragrance, and you get a lot of iris in this as well actually, but I forgot the name of it. I'll probably put it up here, the name of it is. But it smells a lot like a very similar sort of Maison Crivelli fragrance, even though it's meant to replicate Memo's Irish Leather. It also smells like, I compare this actually a lot to Tom Ford's Tuscan Leather. It smells really similar to Tuscan Leather, but obviously there's not as much leather in there. It's sort of toned down, and it's much brighter than the original. So if let's say, if Tom Ford Tuscan Leather was a person, this would be Tom Ford's Tuscan Leathers. This would be Tuscan Leather's sort of younger brother in a way. He's much more charming, he's much more easy to meet, He'll greet you at the door, he'll give you hugs and kisses, he'll be there when you need him. He's more reliable in a way. Tuscan leather's in the same sort of nuance, but Tuscan leather's much more daring, much more dark, much more hard to trust. I must say, when I first bought this fragrance, I wasn't really a big fan of it. At first I used to hate it, I used to have things against it, but over time I've warmed up to this and I've been wearing this quite regularly to certain occasions or events, and it has got me quite an amount of compliments, I must say, especially for its price and its uniqueness. One thing I forgot to say as well, it is very, very unique. Now, once again, if I was to describe this to somebody who is not really into fragrances, didn't know what notes smell like, I would think it smells like you're waking up early in the morning on a spring, summer sort of day, fresh green grass, freshly cut green grass, tons of sunshine, and you're about to put on a white, not a white t-shirt, but more of a white dress shirt. It is very sort of formal, very sort of classy, and very balsamic, I must say as well, if you know what balsamic smells like. And very sort of classy, but not sophisticated. It's more of a everyday sort of fragrance, but at the same time it isn't. If I were to think of an ideal occasion for this, I will say, if you were to go out with your friends to go play golf, this would be the perfect fragrance. It smells rich, elegant, luxurious, but at the same time very laid back, very sort of informal but formal at the same time, I may say. Very casual, smart casual, yeah, there you go, that's the word. Very sort of smart casual. Now, if I were to say whether this perfume would be more masculine leaning or feminine leaning, I'd say it's definitely masculine. I wouldn't really call this a unisex perfume. It does have a lot of masculine nuances that most women would not be able to pull off. As I said, it is very, very balsamic, barely any sweetness to it, and if there is sweetness, it's sort of citrusy and complements the sort of balsamic nature to it. But I will say, it's got quite a lot of citrus to it. I think it's got a tangerine or orange in the top notes. Even though it's not listed, I smell a lot of orange/tangerine in it. But yeah, as a man, you could definitely pull this off. But at the same time, not to all occasions. As I said, it's a very sort of classy fragrance, not to be mixed with sophisticated, but very sort of classy. And in the right occasion, any man can pull this off and smell it extremely, extremely good. One thing that I get from the fragrance as well is you get a sort of dried sort of tea note in a way. Now obviously the sort of dried tea note you get from this is mainly from the yerba mate, but it sort of lifts up and makes it more classy than usual because the juniper berries make it very fresh and uplifting, but the yerba mate gives you that sort of tea smell whilst mellowing it out. And then you got the sort of leather in the base that is barely there. It sort of gives a nice sort of roundness and sort of base to the fragrance. If I were to think of the leather, it's not a very sort of rugged, animalic leather. It's more of a suede, if I may say. Yeah. It smells more like suede than actual leather. Very, very smooth. Got a touch of creamy sweetness in the leather. But like I once said, this is not a leather perfume, even though it says leather. It's trying to dupe a leather fragrance. What I will say though, as a clone, this is actually quite the decent clone. It smells extremely similar to the Memo, but I actually prefer this over the original. It's a fraction of the price, only 10 to 12 Great British pounds here in the UK. Yeah, man. I don't really have anything bad to say about this as a clone. It does smell like what you're trying to clone, if that makes sense. But as a standalone fragrance as well, I still think this is a really good option. Now, projection and longevity. Regarding projection, this lasts me all day, easily. After times, I would get nose blind to this fragrance, but I would receive compliments from peers, from people around me saying, "Who smells so good?" And I noticed this, man. But I remember one time I was doing a video shoot and I had this on and I spread it on about 6 to 7 in the morning. People would give me compliments around 3 or 4 in the afternoon because I was doing a very long day of video shooting. That's relevant. But yeah, it does last quite a bit. Now projection wise, at least on my skin, I would get 2 to 3 hours of projection, and overall longevity, I'd say this lasts maximum 10 to 11 hours. But at the same time, my skin is completely different from yours, and that's just how it lasted on my skin. Now, once again, the sort of audience that I'll recommend this fragrance to would be more mature individuals. I do not think a teenager could pull this off, and if they could pull it off, but only certain rare occasions. It's a much more elegant, high-class sort of fragrance that, let's say somebody in their 40s or 50s, they could pull this off easily every day. Whereas someone in their 20s and 30s, they would still be able to pull it off, but they have to be the right kind of person. When I think of this fragrance, I sort of think of either a posh old man wearing this as an everyday fragrance, or an old money or daddy's money young rich young man who lives in the rural sort of Italian areas. He drives a nice Jaguar E-Type or a sort of old classic luxury car. He's sort of very well put together, wears dinner shirts and bow ties to fancy dinners, and he's very sort of well behaved, if that makes sense. But at the same time, that is still my rendition of what kind of person I think this suits. And obviously that varies to different people, but in my opinion, that's what I think it smells like. Now, should you buy this fragrance or not? Well, first of all, it's only 10 to 12 pounds, man. If you want to have a nice, fresh, clean, green, sort of uplifting fragrance that's also kind of classy, go ahead, man. But at the same time, if you're worried about dropping 11 to 12 pounds on a fragrance, then I think you've got bigger problems to think about, man. Don't try waste all of your money on one fragrance if all you got is 11 to 12 pounds. This is simply for certain occasions. I don't think this should be a signature scent unless you're the right kind of person. You've got to get sort of an idea of what this smells like first before you buy it. But I still think this is still a very good fragrance, very sort of high quality, very upper class. Either way, guys, thank you so much for looking at this video today. Hope you enjoyed watching this video, and hope you got some information on Lattafa's and Abiyedh leather. If you have any more suggestions, please do not hesitate to write them down in the comments. I'm still a small YouTuber trying to grow, so please do not hesitate to hit that subscribe button either. Okay, just so you don't know, I'm still saving up for a good microphone. I'm currently using a shotgun microphone with a filter on it, so that's why it sounds so bad. It's just the mic. And yeah, guys, once again, thank you so much for watching, and I wish you all a good day.